Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
To convert or not to convert, that is the question.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with your host, award-winning annuity expert and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
When an engine needs a rebuild, I bring it to Joe.
That's me.
And you know what he's rebuilding a lot more of these days?
4-cylinder engines.
Small engines work a lot harder than big engines, so if you have a small car, it's even more important to take care of it right. Change the oil regularly, and put in a new Fram oil filter when you're supposed to. A Fram filter doesn't cost much.
I do.
But the choice is yours. You can pay me now.
Or pay me later.
Well, that was a great commercial, wasn't it? That was the Fram oil filter commercial. You know, the old "you can pay me now or pay me later," which is basically what the government is saying when it comes to the money buried in your IRA or 401k. You can pay the taxes now over to the government, or you can wait. I like to say you can put off the pain and pay them later. But either way, just like that Fram oil filter commercial, you're going to pay. So, assuming you have money in a 401k, IRA, 403b plan, thrift savings account, or maybe you're one of those rare souls that has a lump sum pension available that you either have recently rolled into an IRA or thinking about rolling into an IRA, when it comes to paying the government their fair share, that's the taxes you owe them, you've only got two choices for dealing with these taxes. Number one, you can either pay the government now, which we'll talk about that in just a second, or you can do what millions and millions, the majority of Americans, quite frankly, are doing. You're going to pay the taxes later. The question is, which is best for you? Again, A, defer those taxes owed on your 401k or IRA as long as possible, or B, pay the taxes now willingly and then never be taxed on that money again. Really, really interesting question. And you know what the answer is? It all depends. Because every red-blooded American who can fog a mirror has been told by the financial world, unfortunately, that it is better to defer taxes. In other words, to put your money into the 401k, to max it out. You may have heard of this. In fact, the nice person that comes by from your 401k, the one that's handling your money, that's kind of a conflict of interest, is telling you to put more and more in your 401k. They get fees on this, keep in mind. By the way, that money's all locked up in your 401k until you turn 59 and a half or retire. But nevertheless, you're hoping upon hope that it will lower taxes. Well, again, as we've said, it just depends. Well, welcome to the WorryFree Retirement, folks. I am your host, 401k rollover specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And on today's show, we're going to delve into one of the most interesting topics known to man. In fact, with us in the studio today is America's favorite financial sidekick, Aaron Orander, and his favorite sidekick, Matt Stebbins. And already I can tell they've been so excited about this information. It's called a Roth Conversion. Now, the reason they're not real excited, these are kind of some young pups in here. They're not really thinking about retirement, but more than likely, you are. You've probably heard about a Roth IRA. You've maybe heard about a Roth conversion. In the next segment, I'm going to break this down, and this is going to be some interesting stuff, because all kidding aside, this concept of a Roth conversion, I'm going to say could save you literally thousands upon thousands of dollars in tax savings, and more importantly, when you die, save your heirs a ton of money in taxes. So what we're talking about is this notion of trying to roll this over, your 401k, IRA, thrift savings account, to somebody like us, and we're going to decide if it makes sense, if we handle your money, to do a partial or a full conversion now, or to just, as most people are doing, just put off the pain and wait for something to happen. Maybe, hopefully, that the tax laws will be removed or done away with. Incidentally, I want to show this graphic. Aaron, let's put this up full screen. We'll get into this in the next segment. This is really important stuff. People call it the Trump tax plan in our business, but basically with the recent tax laws, the marginal tax brackets. This is important stuff, and we'll share this with you in the next segment. This is really important. We call this the 12% concept. The brackets, most of the brackets now, many of you are going to fall into a 12% tax bracket. This is really good news, believe it or not, because the highest bracket can be as high as 37% now. Now look at this graph. What this means is if you're married filing jointly, the upper limit of 12%, again, of taxes is $77,400, but they extended and expanded the standard deduction to $24,000. This may not mean much to you, but basically what this is saying is you could take about around $101,000 of income, including the standard deduction available to you, and basically you would only owe 12% federal. If you're single, it's about half that amount. So why is this important? It's very important to know because we've got to decide, do we pay the taxes now or pay the taxes later? And then as you've heard me talk about this darn tax tumor, the tax tumor is the amount of money the government is owing. It's like a lien on your 401k or IRA. In fact, let's do this here and let's throw up our famous graph that we've kind of trademarked with this concept of the tax tumor. And I want you to look at this example. In this example, we've got somebody with a fairly large 401k plan, but notice that area in red, in this example, we're assuming a tax bracket that's pretty high, and it would be if you took out this much money, but that amount of money is not all yours. That amount of money in red is the government's. But you don't know anything about it, you don't pay any attention, you're still working, so you just keep socking money into what's called a pre-tax account, right? So because you think it's tax savings. Well, then you retire one day, and this thing's well over $800,000. You say, I think I'll just take it all out, that's my money. And you find out, no, it isn't all your money. So you've got to remember, we've got to keep this simple. And simply put, if you've got a 401k or IRA, and you're maxing out or putting money in what's called a pre-tax basis, again, you're putting money aside at 5%, 10%, whatever you're doing. I've had somebody come in last night, they're maxing it out, they're putting in $24,000 a year into their 401k plan. Now, it doesn't mean they should stop doing that. What that means is we should pause a minute and say, that's fine, but eventually the government is going to want their money. You've heard of the minimum distribution rules, no doubt. What that means is if you've got a pre-tax account, when you turn age 70 and a half, the government's going to make you start taking money out. There's government tables for that. And you say, yeah, why do they do that, Tony? Because they want their tax revenue. And if you don't need the money, it doesn't matter. And you might say, well, Tony, I've heard of those Roth conversions. Can't I just take my minimum distribution and convert that to a Roth? No, they won't let you do that. So we're going to dive in when we come back. Good stuff. I'm going to get the whiteboard out, but we have to first understand the actual pre-tax accounts. We're going to go through that, and we're going to go through some scenarios. And what if we did what's called a Roth conversion? What if we paid now versus later? Would that make sense? And then we're going to decide, okay, who are you right now? What is your tax bracket? How much money do you have? What are you trying to plan? And how would myself as a financial specialist and retirement planning look into your situation to see if a Roth conversion is right for you? You stay tuned. I'm going to get the whiteboard out. This is some really, really good stuff. I'll be right back. Let's face it, the last thing you want in retirement is to be full of life and flat broke. I'm Tony Walker, and for the past 33 years, I've made it my life's mission to make certain that my clients don't go broke in retirement by providing mailbox money for life. Let me show you how easy it is to be worry-free in retirement by creating a guaranteed income you can never outlive. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started today.
When an engine needs a rebuild, I bring it to Joe.
That's me.
And you know what he's rebuilding a lot more of these days?
4-cylinder engines.
Small engines work a lot harder than big engines, so if you have a small car, it's even more important to take care of it right. Change the oil regularly, and put in a new Fram oil filter when you're supposed to. A Fram filter doesn't cost much.
I do.
But the choice is yours. You can pay me now.
Or pay me later.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement Hour. Tony in the Trenches is kind of an interesting scenario that came up the other day. One of my clients brought in her daughter who had recently lost her husband. So the daughter had received some funds from the death of her husband, went to a local bank, and I say all this, I'm trying to be kind, but it was just comical to watch how this played out. So the teller of the bank saw the large deposit, I like to reckon this with like Kmart. Remember the old blue light specials when you would try to find the specials around, they'd have a blue siren light? Well, that's kind of what happens at these banks. When you deposit a large amount of money, many times they have investment advisors within the bank. So the teller said, hey, we've got an investment advisor that can help you. And my client's daughter said, well, okay, I'll meet with him, I guess. And had to cancel the appointment, went back in later, and the teller remembered her and said, hey, how come you didn't meet with our investment advisor? And she said, well, I think I'm going to work with Tony Walker. So later on, saw the young lady again. The young lady brought up to my client, hey, I talked to the investment advisor about Tony Walker. And my client said, well, what did he say? And she said, well, he just kind of rolled his eyes and said, oh, Tony Walker, all he's going to do is throw everything into an annuity. Now, here's the funny part. My clients, who I haven't even talked to about what we're going to invest in yet, we're just talking conceptually things that she wants to do. We don't recommend investments right up front on anything. Said to the teller, well, what's an annuity? And the teller said, I don't know. So anyway, what's so funny is this particular person, we're not going to do any annuities for her at this stage. And incidentally, a lot of these advisors out there, you may be one of them, folks, please don't tell people what we do. You don't know what we do. In fact, we've got over $50 million in our Charles Schwab platform. That has nothing to do with annuities. I've been doing this 34 years. I'm a fiduciary, registered investment advisor. Show what you want to show, advisors. I'm fine with that. I don't tell people what you do. Please don't try to tell people what we do, because most of you have no clue what we do with the Worry-Free Retirement. All right, and this is an example of what we do. These are the extended services, the planning services. All this stuff we do, there's no cost at all. So what we're talking about, if you're just now joining us, is we're trying to think about taking a taxable account and making it tax-free. In this example, we're calling this a Roth Conversion. I call this the 12% tax factor. Now again, if you're just joining us, let's throw up this graphic, Aaron. This is the new tax brackets under the Trump tax plan, all right? As you can see, there's a 12% tax bracket in there, and actually, you can see as you make more, the more you make, the more they take. Notice this, the break point for the 12% tax bracket at 2018, for a married filing jointly, you can make up to $77,000, but with the standard deduction, actually, you can make up to $101,000. Single is about half of that. And you say, well, Tony, why is all this so important? It's really important if you want to save taxes on your 401k or IRA. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use an actual example here, and we're going to go through this scenario. Again, what we're trying to do is determine, does it make sense to take your current 401k or IRA and convert a portion of that over to a Roth. That's called a Roth conversion, all right? So in this example, I'm going to call this, I used to study under a gentleman by the name of Bob Castellone, and I love this. There's basically three types of returns. And if you're understanding economics, you've got to understand these three types of returns. What everybody likes to talk about is the internal rate of return. So let's say you've had a good run with the stock market. Maybe your IRA has returned 8%. That's called the internal rate of return, folks. That doesn't mean that's what you're going to put in your pocket, because remember, we've got a tax tumor buried in this. It may have fees, it's got risks, so that's just the internal rate of return. The second rate of return is called the external rate of return. And that's the amount of money you actually make after taxes, all right, after fees, okay, and there could even be after investment risk, but we'll just stay with those two. So now we've got internal rate of return, external rate of return, and then the final, very few people really understand this one, we call this the eternal rate of return, and that's what happens after you die. All right? So the problem with this IRA, if we don't do anything with it, remember our theme is pay me now or pay me later. And since you've got, most of you have most of your money tied up in these pre-tax plans, you haven't paid any taxes yet. And right now, we're at one of the lowest tax brackets we've ever been for this much income. So let's keep this real simple. Let's say you've got another, let's just kind of come down here, Aaron. Let's say you've got $30,000 of income coming in from various sources, okay? And let's say you're age 62. And maybe you're thinking about Social Security, and maybe you've got a little bit of rental income. So basically, you're under the $100,000 threshold in this point. We're trying to keep it in a 12% bracket. So what we could do, we could do a Roth conversion. Let's just call it $30,000. Okay? So that means you're going to owe 12% of 30. Now, if you're going to do a Roth conversion, folks, you don't pay the tax from within the account. That doesn't even make any sense. Then we're into double taxation. We don't want to do that. What we want to do, in this case, if you had, let's say, money sitting out languishing in a savings account, we want to take that money, and we'll just call it, just so I can do the math real quick, $2,500, and that goes to the government. Now, why would we do all this, Tony? What is the point? What we're trying to do by doing this is now we have this money, this full $30,000. Granted, we had to pay taxes on this, but it's growing tax-free forever. This is a key point, folks. Now, I'm going to get into this in a minute because you also have to calculate the cost here, but why would we go through all these gyrations? Because internally now, we've made that 8% tax-free. Externally, we'll never have to pay taxes on it again during our lifetime. Also a key point, when you turn 70 and a half with your pre-tax IRA, you've got to take what's called minimum distributions. And a lot of people I meet, they don't want to take them, but they have to. But with this, now that it's in a Roth account, it's tax-free forever. And if you don't want to draw it, you don't have to. In fact, when you die, that could go to the children completely tax-free. So remember, when you're analyzing things, you have to look at the internal rate of return. That's one rate of return. The external is after taxes and fees, and the eternal is what's left when you die. Is anything going to erode that wealth as you're passing assets on to the kids? Now, what I want to dive into next, so that's how a Roth conversion works. So if you're interested in going through a Roth conversion analysis, it's absolutely free. I'll do this for you in person. If you've got a 401k, IRA, thrift savings account, I'm going to repeat those again, you are a candidate for a Roth conversion. And as you can imagine, potentially this could save you a lot of money in taxes and is a great way to consider dealing with your tax tumor. But here's what I want to deal with. This is what a lot of advisors don't understand. If you do a Roth conversion, number one, you want to be very careful. Like if we went in and converted that whole $300,000, that would be ludicrous. Let's put up that graph again, Aaron. So if we look at the tax bracket graph, if we converted the full $300,000 over, that's going to take you up into roughly a 32% bracket. That means you're going to owe about $90,000 in taxes now. And you're going to say, well, where am I going to get that money? Good question. Even if you had the money, that $90,000, that tax, whatever that tax is, you have to remember is gone forever. Now, the reason I tell you all this, this was years ago, I was looking at some software that was supposed to convert this Roth IRA over, and you could explain to people how to do it. And it was kind of a gimmicky software when I got up to the place in Boston, but I was there. So I'm sitting there listening to this gentleman that created it, very sharp individual, and he starts talking about a Roth conversion and the taxes. And at that time, I was studying internal, external, and eternal rates of return, and I kind of raised my hand sheepishly. I mean, there's probably 80 people in this room, and I said, sir, this software looks great. I like your calculations, but you didn't put an interest factor on the cost. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? Why would I do that? And I said, well, I mean, you're putting an internal rate of return all the way through. In other words, he was assuming the account grew at 8%. So if the account's growing at 8%, but I had to have a tax, don't I have to take the tax and compound that out at 8%? And he said, well, no, you wouldn't do that. And I thought, well, of course you would. Because opportunity cost says we can't just take a cost and not account for it. So every cost has to be accounted for. So my point is, as you're going through this, and when we go through this exercise, be very careful. Roth conversions are being talked about a lot. I'm seeing a lot of people rush into these, and what most advisors do not understand is how to count the cost properly. So there's two factors we're going to work with if you want us to go through this Roth conversion analysis. And again, anybody's eligible. All you got to do is have a 401k or IRA, okay? What we're going to determine is where is your current tax bracket, all right? We're going to think about what future tax brackets would be. We haven't even gotten into that. That's a good point. One of my concerns, I met with a CPA the other day, and this is a concern he has. Let's think about taxes right now. I just saw something on the news. We're recording this show on October 16th, 2018. Deficits are gradually continuing to spike. Where's the government going to get revenue from? Could taxes go up in the future? The CPA and I were talking. The CPA said, I think they're going to eventually go back up. And I said, you know what? I think they probably will too. I don't think there's any way not to raise them in the future. So today, this year, right, now might be a good time to convert these accounts over. Do you do them all at once? Of course not. So here's what you need to do. Let's go through an analysis. It's absolutely free. You would meet with me in person at either our Bowling Green or Louisville, Kentucky office. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Once there, you just click on that Let's Get Started button. Again, that's TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call 877-499-9255. And you know what the best part is at Tony Walker Financial? There are no account minimums. We can open an account for as little as $5,000. So keep that in mind too as you're thinking about meeting with us. Well, we're having a great time talking about Roth conversions. Does the Bible have anything to say about Roth conversions? It does not, but it does have something to say about spiritual conversions. Really good stuff coming up. And I'm actually going to share something a little bit about my past that might help shape where we're going with our practice and why I do what I do. I'm going to get me a cup of coffee. I'll be right back. Tired of getting up every day and heading off to work with no end in sight? I'm retirement specialist Tony Walker, and I've helped lots of people retire much sooner than they ever thought possible, and maybe I can help you do the same.
If you're over the age of 50 and have at least $250,000 to invest, schedule your free meeting with Tony to see if you can retire sooner than you think. Simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement with the money missionary himself, Tony Walker.
All right, welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Good cup of coffee this morning. You know, our show topic is dealt in great detail with the notion of converting your 401k or IRA into a non-taxable situation, a process known as a Roth conversion. But as we can see from the details of the whiteboard, it's not that easy, and of course it can come with a lot of cost when you convert pre-tax to after-tax. Now, the first step to this conversion is realize, first of all, with any conversion, you got a problem. In this case, you have a tax tumor, and the only way to deal with it is possibly, one option, to convert it. Now, we can help you make this call, all right? That's the financial part. But does the Bible have anything to say about Roth conversions? No, it doesn't. But it does have something to say about spiritual conversions. I want to turn to one of the most interesting exchanges in the Bible. It's between a very well-schooled teacher of his day, a man by the name of Nicodemus. Nicodemus approaches Jesus in the middle of the night. Jesus is new on the scene, and he's got all these signs and wonders, and this learned man, a Jewish man, wants to know more about this fella. So in John 3:1, we see that Nicodemus he's described as the ruler of the Jews. In the middle of the night, he's got these glowing remarks about Jesus, and out of the blue, in hopes of trying to figure out the key to the kingdom, so to speak, Jesus says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you are born again, you cannot see the kingdom of God." Now, Nicodemus, in a logical response, I'd probably say the same thing. Well, how can a man be born again? Do you re-enter the mother's womb? I mean, he's trying to figure out this whole physical thing, and what Jesus here is talking about is being converted. And really what he means is converted from a state of not knowing God to a state of knowing God, not seeing the kingdom to seeing the kingdom. You see, the problem is, folks, in our unconverted state, we're like that pre-tax 401k. We're unconverted. Everything we see is through the eyes of the flesh. We cannot see God through the flesh. Only that can be done, as Jesus would say, is if we are born again. Now, this born again comes through conversion. It comes through the power of God, and it's the same experience I had in June of 1991. Matt is with us in the studio. Matt, how old are you right now? Matt he's Aaron's favorite sidekick. He's becoming one of my favorite sidekicks too, doing a great job helping produce the show. But Matt is 31, so it's ironic. When I was 31, in June of 1991, I was 31, I was really down on my luck. Dead broke, just had our second child, wife working nights as a nurse trying to keep this business of mine going, and basically felt like, to be honest, I was about ready to just throw in the towel. Nothing was going right at all. But what's interesting, when I saw that my nature could not overcome the shortcomings I was dealing with, I felt that God kind of saved me. That's what I felt like, basically. And what happened was, in my sorrow, I actually came to the realization that I had to start trusting Him. Now in Acts 15:3, put this up real quick, Aaron. It's interesting. Conversion's not referred to much in the Bible, but in Acts 15:3 it says that early church members were describing in detail the conversion, in other words, the behavior, the spirit of the Gentiles. So then Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians 7:10, and this was the experience I had. Let's turn over there in real quick. 2 Corinthians 7:10, which this is how I felt in 1991. It says, Paul talks about it's a sorrow that you have that is actually a sorrow that leads to repentance without regret. Have you ever done that? You ever had things in your past you regret? God says, no, there ain't going to be any more regret anymore, but this sorrow is going to produce death. What it means is your flesh is no longer to take control. You're going to allow the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God is going to convert you into seeing things totally different. Just like your 401k becomes a taxable to non-taxable, so too your spirit is changed when you're converted, which is what happened to me in 1991, all right? So this is what we're talking about, is taking advantage of the sorrow that you might be experiencing. I meet a lot of people. I had literally 20 appointments yesterday. I met a widow. She's going through a lot of grief. She has a lot of sorrow. And what I would have to remind her, or remind anybody right now that's dealing with grief, is possibly this sorrow is being used by God to change you and maybe convert you to see the world through the eyes of Him and not through the eyes of the world. You know, Jesus we close with this. He said, blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. Well, folks, what about you? We're talking about financial things. We're talking about conversion. And maybe for the first time in your life, you're sitting there saying, Tony, I didn't even know I could convert these 401ks or IRAs into tax-free statuses. I didn't know anything about this. The financial world's never taught me this. Well, I would like to show you how we might be able to help you. The only way we can find out, though, is we got to meet. We got to see, first of all, how much is the tax tumor? How much are you going to owe and your family going to owe on all this money? And then can we possibly take some of that taxable money and convert it to tax-free? If I were you, I think I'd want to know that, because that could save you and your family a lot of money. So how do you take advantage of this free offer? How do we look at a Roth conversion to see if it's right for you? It's easy. You just go to our website and click on the Let's Get Started button. Now, once there, that information goes confidentially to our office. They're going to contact you, and we're going to either set up a meeting at our Bowling Green office or the Louisville office. You'll meet with me in person. There's no cost or obligation. We meet for about 30 minutes, and we go over your information. I ask a lot of questions to find out about you, and then we schedule a second appointment. And during that second appointment, I'll share with you my findings in writing, and best of all, you get to take that information, and if you want to, study it and come back for another appointment to discuss those recommendations in more detail. So what are you waiting for? Take advantage of this free offer. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. We've got 24-hour answering service now that can help you as well. You just call 877-499-9255. That's 877-499-WALK, and they'll be happy to answer any questions and again, tell you how you can get started in working with us. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's program. I've enjoyed being with you. You remember, though, between now and next week, between now and the time we meet, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.